Bonjour.
Ani,
Welcome to Enweying, Our Sound podcast. This is our podcast about raising children in Anishinaabemowin as second language learners.
I'm Mashkogapakwe, and this is my husband.
Ozawa Kijigoganu.
Here we will be talking about stories, challenges, triumphs, and tips as we share our experiences about our household of 5. Beamed again.
Okay. Pass my waist.
Ani Bojo Kinawea, Mashkogapakwe, Dishna Kaz, Mage Emmeline. It's Emmeline here, and
Bonjour. Ozawa Kijigoganu. Dayamampi. Mati Migaki. Shoganashi Nozwin.
And I think today we were going to talk about some of the good times and the fun activities that we've done while second language learning with our kids. Ozawa gi Mkwendan and P Chamaka Geek Chamaka Dendam Mien Zadai Geekadad Nishnabemo Mage Zadai Gi Nishnabemo What? Just to be clear, Zada is our daughter, Adonis.
The Mkwendan. Nibanagego. Ganabach Gana da Nindoendan we Nishnabemwet Zadai Zam Nishnabem Toa Zadai Gi expectio we Nishnabemwet Nanagodnong one in the ma Kinawea Nishnabem Sik Moge Boa Nishnabemwet Mkwendan Gooding Zadai Ni Xibigje Zadai Gi in Madabed and Jigazi Bigsheng Gi Domino Bing Minoa Gi Ziganan Bish Debang we Sabao Duya Winterson Minoa Bungi at Bungi Bungi Bish Giziganan Toganing Zadai Minoa Zadai Kita Toganan Mi yung Gooding Mam Kadendama Gawin Gi Abditu Sin Shaganashimwan Zadai Gi Kendan Etta Nishnabemwan Kidwin Mi yung Gooding Gi Mam Kadendama Nishnabemwat Kindash Anish P Mam Kadendaman Zadai Nishnabemwat
Ganabach Nij Name Gish Kakshaja Zadai Gibidagoshin and Kasha and Gigwesh Katada Wode Zadai Pikit Bitagoshin and Adonis Gija Ode Beisho Mandam Dopuning Craft Chigay Gago like Nibana Bisagan Suck Gasastamanam like a bunch of little things Gitchajang Mage Outtake Zadai we or Donis we onaden gonna batcha basic pitendog pitendog what mazinagan zadai ginendam midash gibija besho manda dopuning gikida gashe mishin mazinagan magi gikida nanangadnang Ms. Mazinagan McGinnigan gonna batshigi going gi kidosi going guyak sastamina midashki kidad gawin Mazinagan oede beisho manda Mazimbige natagunsak or nunda Mazimbige natagunsak ingi manka dendam onzam ikeda nan and mage and gudwaswe kedawinan gawin basic mage gawin basic imperative mage command gi the bot not going to bajma win the mo describe going just going to see no waj like going gasha going o de be show gi opportune be show gi kido be show Mazimbige not to gunsak mino wa o get your kid when Mazimbige not to gunsak like going o de like yeah so I wasn't expecting that because so far up till now she's 3 years old and a bit, and it's usually like she can say a couple words, 2, 3, maybe 4 she'll string along, but this was like a whole her explaining, and she had just come home from my mom's house, so I was thinking like she would be in her English thinking brain, coming home, and for her to come home, immediately go to Anishinaabemowin, and then for her to be using like filler words and stuff, like for me, I was just like very shocked and impressed, and to me that just showed me that her increase in vocabulary in English helps her increase in vocabulary in Anishinaabemowin without even learning it. So that was one for me. So I think we're just going to kind of take that and lead into times that the times we enjoyed the most learning alongside our children or learning with one another as partners. And we kind of wanted to go through, different times that we can reflect on and remember that were really good. And then kind of reflect on all those different phases of our life together as in a partnership that's aiming to revitalize Anishinaabemowin. Okay, so I guess we'll start like when I first got pregnant. We weren't really expecting that. So that kind of like pushed us into a space where we felt like an urgent need to learn the language faster. We had both already attended UG at that point, which we had talked about in our last episode, Ojibwe Mota Dada Magadaki Minang in Minnesota. So we had already been there together the previous summer, and so I believe we applied again and were accepted. So we went back knowing that I was 5 months pregnant and we were going to be bringing somebody into this world very soon, like within 5 months. So there was like, yeah, I felt a huge pressure to be learning as much as I could in that time period.
Yeah, I think there was pressure to be like, okay, I need to be really proficient. I need to be almost fluent because this baby is going to be coming soon, and they need to hear the language spoken as properly as possible.
And I think these are both goals that we had in mind. Maybe not, well, I don't know. Like, I'd say I'd have I had always wanted to have a partner who was Anishinaabe, who could speak the language since I was a little girl, but I didn't think it was possible. So in my adult life, when I found Monty and I knew that's what my goal was, we both were kind of like, all right, here's our goal, and it's kind of being put into play here. It's becoming a reality. Um, we are going to have to get to the work faster than I had anticipated. Um, One thing that I started attending prenatal classes at the local. There's a organization here that helps out urban Indigenous uh, community members, and they had a prenatal program. So I got a little bit of access to ceremony and culture and knowledge carriers through that. But it also helped remind me and reinforce me to start reading to my belly, and for Monty to be reading, for that baby not just to hear my voice, but to hear his voice and to hear it in our language. So we picked like one book in particular that we read a lot. Gi Bitagoshinawat Miyagi Wagoshuk, I think. I read that one a lot just because I liked the pictures. It was slow. It was one of the few picture books I had already invested in. And I was like encouraging Monty to also talk to my belly.
Yeah. So I would read from different resources that we had, even like non-kids books, and or just speaking the language.
You and I like encouraged you to drum to me a couple of times as well, and to sing. I mean, that's it was still language. Excuse me. Language exposure, and also like part of who we are to hear those sounds, right? And at Oog, it was awesome because we just had so much exposure 24/7 to those sounds, and and then I just knew that when it came to like physical activity and whatnot, that was usually the time that I like sat out or took a break. I started opening up Marion Corbier's lexicon book at that point. I had received it in 2013 at Georgian College, but we were never given it in school. So I started to open that up and try and tackle that throughout the beginning of the pregnancy. We were also able to, like, before COVID, attend a lot more events, conferences and stuff, right? We were going to...
Anishinaabe Moente conference. Came to Ashkenashnabemjik again, I think.
Yeah, and oh yeah, that was a summer in Chigang, right? I didn't attend for too long because it was outdoors, and that was rough on big pregnant me. And then, yeah, you were trying to speak Anishinaabemwen during the labor. I was telling you to stop.
Yeah.
So even she got to hear, some language in when we were about to meet each other. That was actually really wonderful, though, because she was welcomed into the world with her language. And so when she did arrive, all I can remember for those first couple days was we just listened to Lee Opazon Staples for like on repeat with her for those first couple, like I think maybe 1 or 2 days we were just catching up on sleep and whatever, but then after that, that's all I can remember for a couple days.
Yeah, like I remember we were pretty strict or I was at least the first year.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want her to have any English.
Nothing. We had this house was really good for the first year.
Yeah, so when I would put on a movie, I would put it on in a different language, and I would just put on the English subtitles to read.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it was, German or French or Russian or whatever, just another language, so that she wasn't hearing any English.
And I was putting her to bed with tapes of recordings of elders and into her room as she slept. I taped Post-it notes all over the walls for myself because I was learning. I was still very, very beginner, very early on in my learning. So I was practicing that every day. Yeah, we had a lot of Anishinaabe when wherever we go in public, I was always singing to her. Whenever I was in the mall, I was always talking to her in the language. I like nonstop. I would always use every opportunity we were in public together to be in the language, especially because no one knew what I was saying. So I felt if I'm making mistakes anyways, people aren't, you know, that was the one benefit of being alone and practicing the language on your own with babies. Like they just need to hear those sounds.
Yeah, and I was reading to her still with the children's books that we have, and just giving her exposure to the language, because they talk about how when you read books like English, like the regular, um, if you're raising your kid just speaking English, it's good to read to them because they get exposure to all this other language that you might not say in the regular day. So I thought, well, if we would just do that in a language, and that would help.
So one thing that I can recommend is trying to find a support system, not just an emotional support system, but a language support system. Just because within that first 3 months of her arriving, we had okay, it's I'm gonna be emotional. We had 1, 2, 3, 4. Was it just 4? Was it 4? I think 4 of all could fit in the car, right? Sleeping, Soand, Squonquet, and Petacoons. Yeah, they showed up and they drove from, all over. Minutes.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
friends that we had met through OOG, um, they had, and also Miss Quanquet, who is from the Soxing, um, who we talked about last episode as well. So they all came here. Um,
Someone light a smudge for me, please. Just kidding.
They all came here in, was it October?
Yeah, well, I think November.
November?
Yeah.
And we all just right away, we just stayed in the
We
language.
yeah, as soon as they opened the door.
Yeah. We didn't say any English. And they were all talking to Sadai and just using the language with her and
Singing, and I cooked a dinner that was way too freaking spicy because I forgot Thai green curry spicy on top of it. Didn't need those jalapenos. Shout out to you guys for dealing with that. It was awesome. We spent like, I don't know, 2-3 days. Like we went for a walk and we had dinner at our house and they sang us a song with the ukulele and their beautiful voices and then I think we went bowling the next day. And when we went bowling, we just stayed in the language, and it was just so awesome. And I know for a fact that they'll tell you the same thing, that those were like some extremely special times, because like to find people your age that are willing and able to do that is I think like super crucial in your learning. Like I said, when I was learning German, the times that I learned the most was when we were speaking in German, having fun, going out and doing things together, because you want to be there and you want to. It's motivation on its own to have fun, right? So I'd say get a good support system going, learning wise, if that has to be from afar on Zoom or whatever. But try and create friends within those language communities. It makes it a little bit easier. And then shortly, so then that takes us into March. I think we had another immersion over at the Shonius residence with our Eshkanishnah Bemjik friends. Not to brag about all our friends.
well, no,
I'm just kidding. It
is important.
It is the point.
It's important to create a community of your own, like of not only you developing a relationship with fluent speakers that you can talk to, even daily if you could, or weekly, or just someone you can connect with, but also those other learners that are kind of in the same spot as you. And I mean, you can talk about different things that, you're not going to talk to an elder about various
Memes.
memes or sports or movies. Might not have the same taste as an elder.
Amongst us. Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and then now there's like the commonality of being parents now. So we have friends that are now parents. They're raising their kids in the language. But yeah, so we had Idaban and just Shonia's invite us over and other people. So at that point, we were the only ones that had Zadai at the time, and we had our other friends there, and we just all stayed in the language and hung out. And
we cooked together. I can remember cooking and trying to find a word for stir, and we came up with Dajia. And then we played. I think, were we playing cards at the table, or what were we doing at the table? Someone had a guitar, and I remember sitting with Zadai, and the cat was there, and the dog was there. Were we playing a game with cards, or were we just
Probably
talking or something? Yeah, and I can remember, we played a couple of games that weekend, Mario Kart, and they played one downstairs that I wish I could have joined in on, but I was feeding Zadai and getting her to bed and stuff. But
watched UFC.
yeah, we went on a hike out. They had like a really nice trail out near where they live, like out behind their house. So we got to go for a walk all together. I think we brought the dog, and
Oh, and I remember we're sitting at the table, and Migonovic looks at Zadai, and Zadai's like really small and not talking yet.
yeah, she's like 5-6 months.
Yeah. So Migonovic says, "Oh, Minuendan, Gubibgilian, like I like your shirt," and then Zadai starts starts smiling, and like she understood and liked what she said.
Yeah, it was
So
cute.
it was like she understood at that point, like even though she wasn't talking, she could understand a lot.
Yeah, definitely comprehension at that point, because I have a video of her at 5 months, and I'm saying, Neiman, and she's rocking back and forth in the laundry basket. So she had a lot of comprehension at that point, I think. She had exposure as well to English, just because of our family. We had our family around. So she was bilingual at 6 months. It's just there was none in our household.
And then I have I have a YouTube playlist of Anishinaabe. Like I think we talked about that before, that I would play for her, and she liked it. And then Rochelle Allen has a playlist that she collects a bunch of different YouTube videos. So we played that for her too.
Rochelle is an all-star, just pioneering the way. I just want to say that I can remember that first time at, I think it was Anishinaabe Mointake. Was it in Toronto?
No.
Or was that a different one? What one was the Toronto one? Oh, Little NHL. We were all there for Little NHL. That's what it was. And we had gotten together, I think, for, or was it?
It's an all-native hockey tournament, for those that don't know.
Either or. It was somewhere. And we were in the same hotel, or we were gathering in a hotel after swimming, and she put on this playlist, and I hadn't even seen it before, and I thought, it was something special from a website that I'd never have access to, and the kids are all sitting around, still like drying off from the pool, and they were having their snacks. She had bought a bunch of snacks, and she's at the snacks out, and Zadai was there with our daughters are about the same age, and they all sat around and watched Anishinaabe stories from that playlist, and I was just like, what a lifesaver, because at that point I was like so exhausted, right? And nursing and not sleeping, right? Everyone knows. And it was just kind of my first, like, that was kind of like the first time we had really hung out and our children had access to hang out together and stuff in the same space, who are also first speakers. And yeah, so that was just like such a special moment, and we've had many after that, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I do not want that to go unrecognized or unacknowledged. So again, even for our children, we have tried to create that language learning community for them, and that is one way, because they're gonna need people to talk to, and they're gonna need little friends, and like, don't isn't this the collective mission, right? For them all to be speaking together, and for them to actually be friends and have stuff to talk about, right? So that has been another mission of ours. I don't want to say mission either, but just goal.
Yeah, so the first year that we brought her to there, it was, for me, challenging because I was facilitating and then also being a dad at the same time. So it's like juggling both of those things, making sure this immersion experience is running proficiently, and then also making sure diapers are changed and everyone's fed.
I'm getting a mental health break.
Yeah.
Because I was up with Monty and Zada and our daughter alone in a residence with like very little AC and stuff, right? While he's trying to facilitate this, and we're trying to be there because it's language exposure, it's a community of learners, it's exposure for our daughter, right? I didn't want to be there as a moocher by any means, but the whole collective is for us to be raising, and I couldn't commit to being a learner in that space either, just because I had a daughter, and I had to commit to her and her learning. So
But yeah,
tough.
she got a lot of
Yes.
exposure to the language, and the fluent speakers spoke to her, and other learners that were there all spoke to her in the language, and for her it was...
Meal times were really awesome because there's so many people sitting down in one room, and we all had to eat, and it was just it was a really good time for her to be able to kind of sit in her stroller and eat, or sit at the table, or bounce around between tables, and have the opportunity to speak with different kinds of learners and different speakers from different places, as well as socializing and coming together for food. That's so important.
I guess I should add that she had the privilege of being there because I'm one of the organizers. So one of our rules of Eshkinish Nabemjik is that there are no kids, that it's all adults 18 and over. And part of that reason is because we want the students to be focused fully on language learning. And like Emmeline was saying, she was there, she couldn't commit as a student, she was there as a mother, just exposing our child to the language. And I could see that, like, that kind of reinforced that for me. Like, if you're there to learn the language, then you can't have any other distractions. And hopefully what you take away from that 2 weeks of immersion is you can take that back home and use that for the rest of the time you're with your family. But so for some people, that's one of the rules that we put in, is that there are no children, and I think that's why, because there's no other way but to say that there are distractions for your learning, because you're parenting and you can't focus on...
Anyone who's parents in the language knows how hard
Yeah.
it is to try and learn and parent, and especially when you're given an opportunity in a condensed amount of time with the exposure you don't want to lose that, because it isn't an ideal learning space, not space, but it isn't ideal, but neither is our situation. And so it's just kind of one of those sacrifices, and unfortunately I kind of got the opportunity to, because of what Monty said with our daughter, it was for her exposure, and we both committed to no English whatsoever, including my daughter, right?
And there's not a lot of people who are having their children immersed in the language at home. And so kids aren't, if you tell your kid, Anishinaabe Moneta, if they don't speak it anywhere else, and then you want to bring them to an immersion experience and you want them to only speak in the language, that's probably not going to happen. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to speak what they know.
And not fair, right? Because we both know how it feels to be trapped in your own head, right? And not have what you need to be able to express what you need to do to just be a human and live your life, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of the best for both situations. But for Zadai, it was just wonderful.
So I guess we can get into having S1E3. Just he hasn't had that exposure to immersion because of COVID, and we didn't run our immersion camp this year, so he hasn't been like exposed to that type of intense language just at home with us, but not hearing it from other fluent speakers or like in person. Like
Not in person. Yeah.
We'll play videos and stuff, but and then he'll hear like our friends who kind of we use Snapchat or other social media apps to communicate. He'll hear it from there, but he hasn't had that exposure that Zadai had yet.
Yeah, fortunately, he's a second child, and so he's getting not only triple the amount because of language exposure from us this time around, because Zadai is now in the picture using how many more words than we used, but we were also using way more words with Zadai and with him, so it's kind of like a I don't know, quadruple effect, because I mean, I would prefer us to be able to go get real exposure out, but for himself, I'm feeling pretty good. The comprehension is definitely there. He's way too smart for me. I'll admit that. He's way more intelligent than me. And he's a very good communicator, despite the fact that he's not speaking, he's not verbal yet, which is not, he's just not there. He's only 13, 14, where right now? March? He's almost 15 months, so not expecting words.
Yeah, and he's had more exposure to English than Zadai did at her age. So, like I said, we were really strict like the first year with her, but he's getting more exposure to like English TV and things like that. Because we'll let Zadai watch movies in English, but sometimes we'll turn on like French and stuff like that still, but we're giving her exposure to English just so that she's getting some, because we know that in our community, like when she goes back to school or goes to school and stuff like that, it's not going to be immersion, so she needs to understand some words, and one of the reasons like safety and stuff like that. He's getting more English than she did, but he's still fully comprehending Anishinaabe 1, so it's like they'll both be fully bilingual, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I have no doubt about that. S1E3. He also got to hear a lot in the belly. So something that we forgot to talk about was like while Zadai was, I don't know, she turned 2, no, she was like 18 months, I guess, because we missed like a whole gap there where she attended daycare, which was in English with a little bit of exposure to language. We have more language exposure at her childcare operator now, but it's been closed for an entire year. So while I was pregnant, he was also able to hear Zadai speaking, us speaking. So he got like a lot more exposure in the womb than Zada did. I was trying to talk, but when you're just a couple, you're not talking nearly as much as when there's a toddler running around. I think that had a big effect on him as well, and that grounded him as well. Zada, I had full comprehension of what was going on. I did not expect her to understand whatsoever, but you know, he was in there, he was in your belly, and now he's out, and that's the same Nishime. So, anyways, that was one part that I forgot to talk about.
Well, the just going back to Zada, so our daycare on our community, Chipawda Thames, they're trying to do immersion, are trying to create that, and so the ECEs aren't fluent. They have a couple fluent speakers in there to help with getting them proficient, but they mostly speak English with some language sprinkled in daily. So Zada, for us, because we speak to her every day, we don't know exactly, because we haven't heard her use any new words or anything that we haven't used with her. And so other parents, they talk about other parents or grandparents that have kids that go to the daycare that Zada goes to. They'll say things like, "Oh, my child or grandchild, they're coming home and they're saying words and I don't even know what they're saying. I can't even talk back to them. And they're singing songs in the language and I don't even know what they're saying." And for us, like, we don't know because we just use the language, and so we don't know, we can't say, like, we can't give her, like, that applause of, like, "Oh, you're using the language more, yay," like,
Well, it's funny because it's almost the opposite. Because that first year that she went there, it was like she would come home and then she would use English words that we had never used before, and we'd be like, "Where'd you? How do you know this word?"
Yeah, for us, she was coming home and learning new English words.
Like, what?
So it was the opposite effect for us. Although we couldn't.
And then we were like, it was hard to, we wanted to applause it, but then we don't want to applause it because we want to encourage Anishinaabe, so we're like, yeah, like, that's a table, but it's dope win, and we're trying to, like, it was just such a weird fight to have in yourself.
Yeah.
Because you want to, most people are like, yeah, you said a word, and here we're like, no, but in a different language.
Yeah.
Just real hard.
Yeah.
Hard on our kids.
So I can't think of a time, but I don't think I've ever, like, given her praise for using English, even though, like, most parents would. Like, "Oh yeah, you said that right." And
I've been a little softer. I always give the encouragement, but then go back to Anishinaabe when I'm paranoid. I guess I don't know. There's a couple of things that I'd like to talk about S1E3, but I also don't want to miss over kind of talking about you and me, just us. Like, for instance, right now we're given the privilege of, like, we had spare time today to do this podcast. We don't have the kids, and so just kind of things that we've done ourselves as a couple for those who may not have kids and still want to help raise babies or children in the language, or our aunties and uncles, or whatever, right? Whatever the situation may be. These are men, whatever, right? So, personally, we have a whiteboard. We have a couple of whiteboards around the house. And I always, like, say to Ozawa, I've been saying this for a while, if I'm making a mistake, like, please correct me, because I don't want to keep reinforcing the same mistake over and over, and then it's embarrassing. Like, if you're walking around with something on your tooth and no one's telling you, it's really embarrassing, right? And that's how it feels in the language when you're constantly making mistakes. So Monty Ozawa knows to correct me, and he does often, and that's good. But sometimes he'll just write something on the whiteboard if he's noticed I'm saying the same thing over and over wrong. It's like, he's never told me this, but I know it. A really gentle way of being like, hey, maybe if I write it down, you can read it and then you kind of understand what you're saying wrong. And I still go back and make those mistakes because a lot of my Anishinaabe one was wrong and reinforced wrong. So I have to go back and, undo a lot of those mistakes that have already been habitualized and conditioned into me. So that's one. We have a couple whiteboards around the house. We had encouraging words on there at one time. Sometimes it's all baby words, sometimes it's all diaper words. And right now it's kind of like expressions that we say that we can be using in the language that he wrote down. So I think eventually Mom Peach you had written down. I just erased it to write our podcast stuff on it, but I have a picture of it on my phone. And I've also been doing a word list, so I've been going through different books and stuff, or words that I found that I don't know that I use often that I'd like to incorporate. And I do like 7 at a time, and I don't know if anyone does workouts, the add-on takeoff workout where you start with like 12 dumbbell pumps, and then you do 12 squats, you do 12 dumbbell pumps, and 12 squats, and then you do sit-ups, you do 12, 12, 12, and so you keep adding on and then eventually taking off. So I was doing that same kind of exercise but with memorization. So I was adding one word, seal, ashki, plural ashkik, and then I would draw the word into a seal just because as a learner myself, I learn really well that way by drawing and writing and saying all at the same time. So I draw my words into like the action it was, or like I'm on this like waves, gawk. So drawing them like that so that I can remember. That was just one way that I was putting stuff around the house. Do you have any that you'd like to share at the moment?
Just sometimes you just have to grind and just study.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not interrupting. Fine.
Yeah, you just have to put in the grind and just sit there and just like go through a list of words or phrases that you want to know and just kind of memorize them and write them on different things around the house to remember them or study them or look at them every night before bed or something. But the main thing is consistency, and if you're just thinking that you can go to a class once a week and you're going to become a speaker, then you're going to be waiting a long time. You have to use it every day, as much as you can, and
Yep.
you have to study. Like you just have
You have
to
to
put
want
in,
to nerd out on it.
yeah, you have to like put in the grunt work, I guess. And like there's different. I think everyone kind of, if you're an adult, you kind of know what helps you learn or what helps you remember things. For me, like I'll write it down, and then lately I've been trying to record myself so that I could put it on while I'm driving or whatever.
What about stuff as a couple? Like, not romantically, I just mean like stuff that we do within each other to help reinforce. I guess going out in public, if we're out in public, I think we use it more just because, one, it's more comfortable when people don't know what you're saying to each other. And two, it gives us an opportunity to speak in public without making mistakes, maybe. I don't know. Practice saying it out loud in front of people without having to worry.
Yeah, just trying to use it with each other and getting comfortable using it, especially if you haven't really spoken to someone in the language before, like just as just having a conversation. And sometimes it feels contrived or fake when you first do it, but after a while you get more comfortable using it.
And I like to learn, like, I know it's a little bit mushy-gushy for some people, but, like, I like to memorize or know a couple words in our language, in our sound, that are, like, nice to use with your loved one. Like, up to Jinshin, Gazagin, Gazagu, Jimshin, you know.
Words of affection.
Yeah, like, those are just really nice to have in the home, and they're, like, to be able to speak in a different language that is your own to your partner, even if you don't speak the same language, it's still like your own kind of love language as partners. So I really encourage learning a couple and getting used to using them, and like making it be yours. Yours again.
And our kids know those words like Jinshin or things like that.
Yeah, and it's super nice
Or
for them
Jin.
to see us using it, or for them to see us using it in action. It reinforces it through role modeling. You know, this is how you use it. This is how it's used. It's okay to use. Sometimes we're just like too afraid to speak in front of our kids, I find, because we're afraid to make mistakes. But that's how they learn. Like monkey see, monkey do. Don't. What's that expression? Like kids do what you do, not what you say. And so if you want them to listen, you got to demonstrate it. And I'm learning that, you know, through being calm when you're frustrated. But especially through our sound. Like, I encourage you to have the confidence to speak, to give your children the confidence to speak. Or your loved ones, your little ones, your ones around you, anybody. It doesn't have to be your children. We are gearing this specific podcast, us personally, towards raising our children in the language as second language learners, in Indigenous parenthood. I don't want to say Indigenous, I want to say Anishinaabe, but you feel me.
I would say if you're thinking about what words to study or use, I would just say what's common in your everyday life that you do. And one thing is like everybody eats, so words around eating, food, things like that. And then just other things that you do, if you, whatever kind of work you do, or things, the hobbies that you have.
Yeah, it's good to, like, we have, at one point we had a refrigerator magnet that had all the labels of the food in the fridge, categorized from inanimate to animate. For beginners, that's something that you can explore later on. It's not crucially important right now, and for those of you that know, you know. It's just, for us, it's a matter of memorization. And so we had that up there, and so makes it much easier to remember how to say what you want to say, like in Gimwa, Ni Jin, when you know what's what because you memorized it. So makes mealtime easier, and then once you feel like you've gained some control and confidence in that area with an emotion, like a ziganan bish, a guiminaquena, Wisanada, that kind of thing, then you can explore another room and some of those actions within that room. So just starting in one area and feeling really good in it before attempting like a new area, new space, or whatever, I find is good in the beginning.
Yeah.
So we wrap it up.
Yep.
I'll say Pene Anishinaabe, Pene go Anishinaabe mun. Yeah. And but I liked yours better. I just forget what you said.
Gegwa on shitiken, kweja Anishinaabe mian.
Gegwa anchiki
Gegwa on shitiken.
anshitiken. Kweja tu Anishinaabe moyan.
Kweja Anishinaabe mian.
Kweja Anishinaabe mian. Yeah, miigwech. That easy, folks. It's that easy. Just demonstrated. All right, miigwech. Pamapi.
Pamapi.